Welcome to Sci Fi Scarborough Online once again. We are now here with Lolita Fatjo, who is basically Mrs. Star Trek. Anything from the 80s, 90s Star Trek, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, she was a part of it. She started off with the Next Generation, became a pre-production associate and pre-production coordinator for Deep Space Nine, and a pre-production coordinator for Voyager, a production associate for Star Trek First Contact, and also was in the documentary Trekkies 2. Have I got all that correct?
I think you do. Yes, I also was very involved in the Deep Space Nine documentary, What We Left Behind.
I love that. I saw that about a year or so ago. Yeah, fantastic.
Yes.
What was your role on that then? What did you do?
Well, I was talent coordinator for that, and I also was interviewed for it as well. And I just was part of the production team, and I'm really proud of that documentary. I think we did a great job with that. Yep. And maybe later we can talk about the new Voyager documentary, that 455 films. We are in production on that right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. So how did, tell me a bit about your career before we get really into Star Trek. How did you get involved in the first place, doing what you do, and then into Star Trek?
Well, that's kind of a funny story, really. I was an actress in my younger years and living in Los Angeles, and actually doing fairly well as an actress. And in 1986, 87, there was a huge Writers Guild strike. So the whole town shut down for, I think, about 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. Long time. That was after the first season of Next Generation had already filmed and aired. So it was right before the next season was supposed to be shot. Well, I went to work for a manufacturing plant for lack of any other money to come in. So it was through a temp agency, and the temp agent called me the day the strike ended and said, the strike's over. What do you want to do? I said, well, get me out of this manufacturing plant and let's see what we can come up with. And I thought about it, and I thought it's going to take a couple weeks to a month for agents and production companies and films and TV to get those production offices back up and running after 6 or 7 months.
Sure.
So I said to the temp agent, if you can find me a job for maybe a day or two at Paramount, because I lived near Paramount, I'll do that just to kind of keep making some money until my agent can get me back out for acting auditions. So he called me back and he said, I've got 3 jobs at Paramount starting tomorrow. I remember that one of them was on Cheers. One of them, I don't remember what it was now, probably a pilot that never went anywhere. Oh. And one of them was The Next Generation. And I thought, oh, well, that might be kind of fun because I already knew Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes.
Right.
So I had fortunately taken master classes from Patrick Stewart.
Wow. Okay.
When I was in college. And that was phenomenal. And then I knew Jonathan Frakes from playing softball in the Hollywood softball leagues. So I thought, well, maybe that might be kind of fun to see those guys, maybe. I didn't know. And I said to the temp agent, what do I need to know? And he said, well, they need someone to type scripts because they are still doing them on old typewriters. And they were starting to transfer over into computers. So he said, they need someone that knows Microsoft Word. And I said, well, I have no idea what that is, but let me call you back. So I called my best friend who was working at a production company. And I said, John, do you know what Microsoft Word is? And he said, yes. As a matter of fact, we just got it here. He said, you want to come tonight after work and run the tutorial? I said, okay. So I did that. I still didn't understand what Microsoft Word was, but I knew scripts. I knew what they look like. I've seen them my whole life. And I thought, well, this can't be that difficult to figure out. So the next day I go to Paramount Pictures, and I'm much younger then, and, not naive, but just full of, excitement. I'll do whatever I can to, make money. So Gene Roddenberry, he was always had his offices in the Hart Building. And the Hart Building is an old building on the Paramount lot, and it's 4 stories, and it has just one door in and one door out, a very, very long hallway with 4 offices on each side of the hallway. And so I open the door and I see 8 men, one on each doorway, standing in the hallway. And one of them looked at me, and this is like 8 o'clock in the morning. One of them looked at me and said, "Oh, thank God, you must be the Microsoft Word expert." And I said, "Yes, that's me." And I'll tell you, that was the best acting job I apparently ever did, because I
Wow.
didn't I didn't leave for 15 years. So there you go.
Wow.
How I actually came into the Star Trek world.
Just from Microsoft Word, that's interesting. That's amazing.
It
And of
is.
course, now everyone uses Word. It's like the most obvious thing in the world, isn't it? But yeah,
Of
yeah.
course. I mean, but you think back that many years ago, computers were still up and coming.
Sure.
Um, script programs that they didn't exist back then, you know.
Mhm.
So it was a interesting process to learn very quickly. I faked my way through it.
Mhm.
Um, and that's how I got there.
Wow.
So
So you
that's my
you did
story.
Next Generation, you did Deep Space Nine, and you did Voyagers in the big three, as it were. No, you did First Contact as well. Onwards is
Yes,
the best Star Trek
absolutely.
film ever made. I love that one.
Yep.
So can you tell me a
Yep.
bit about what did you do once you were really into the thick of it and you'd got into Deep Space Nine and like pre-production and so on? What was your main role then? Because obviously you started with typing scripts, but I'm sure you did a lot more than that. So what else were you doing when you got into the Deep Space Nine side and Voyager?
Sure. Actually, the title that I have is for the screen only. It really is a script coordinator, which
Right.
now they use on screen. Back in the day, there was an issue because of script supervisor versus script coordinator. So now you'll see on TV a script coordinator title. Back then, we didn't have them.
Right.
So basically, a script coordinator, which is what I was for Deep Space Nine and Voyager, um, works directly with the writers on each show on a daily basis.
Mhm.
Any story outline or any draft of a script or any revisions to a script comes directly from the writers to the script coordinator. The script coordinator is, I'm sure every TV show is different, but for Star Trek, I was in charge of proofreading, doing some editing, doing following some continuity,
Mhm.
and then making sure in all of that that eventually the script got to the 500 people that it needed to go to on the lot.
500
And that was
people.
just a continuing thing.
500
Yeah,
people for each.
all in all, it goes to about 500 people
Wow.
because it goes to all of the actors eventually,
Oh,
but it goes to all of the heads of each department, costume, makeup, anything you can think of. And then, of course, it goes to what we call the suits, all of the executives.
mhm.
So all in all, about between 400 and 500 people ultimately that goes to.
So basically, the whole lot went through
So,
you. It's like every episode went through you.
well, yeah, pretty much. And what made it interesting and kind of difficult for me, I had two great assistants, one on each show.
Mhm.
But I was always having four scripts on my desk because we would be in pre-production for one, so that would be constantly going through all those changes to
Yeah.
get it ready to shoot. And then we'd have one in production where you constantly have changes on a daily basis to what's being shot. So I literally would have four scripts on my desk,
Yeah.
flipping through them every day. But it was a lot of fun. It was challenging. There was many people that worked on both shows in different departments. So
Sure.
we also did, which is crazy now looking back, because not there's very very few television shows that do 26 episodes a year.
Yeah.
Now you get 8, 10, sometimes 6, sometimes 13.
Mhm.
So we really worked 15, 16-hour days, 5 days a week, and sometimes we wouldn't shoot on the weekend, but there was many weekends where the writers had to work.
Did you find that this was literally took over your life for those years? Then did you? They do say American TV is so intense. Were you literally living it all the
Yes,
time?
I was, and I also got involved very early on in the conventions. So when I wasn't working at Star Trek at the studio, I was off on the weekends at different conventions all over the United States, and then eventually, when time would permit or we'd have our hiatus, I would go to Europe, Australia, Star Trek cruises. So I got involved basically like within the first 6 months of that.
Mm.
My
Was
there.
your life, wasn't it? It was
It
just
was, and
yeah, yeah.
it's funny, it still is. The only thing that's different now is I don't have that 15-hour day working on a television show, which I couldn't handle that anymore. I'm too
And
old
not
for that.
not
And
just not just 15 hours, but how many weeks a year were you working? Did you get any
well,
time off during?
we did, but the writers, and I'm not including myself in that, the writers had very little time off because if you think about it, let's say you have a hiatus of 4 to 6 weeks. But when you come back from that 4 to 6 weeks, you have to start shooting right away.
Yeah.
So the writers really had to have things ready to go after hiatus. So the writers had a shorter hiatus. I had a shorter hiatus in my department because we'd have to come in eventually to get those scripts ready.
Yeah.
But it depended on the year and the season. But so yes, like I said, nothing's really changed for me because my whole life really revolves around Star Trek still.
Yeah.
Except for that day-to-day grind, which I don't miss at this point at all.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Were you ever, did you ever basically get down onto the factory floor, was it where they were shooting, or were you always in your office just script? Did you ever
No,
see what was happening as well?
absolutely. I mean, the script coordinator position doesn't necessarily need to be on the set, but absolutely, I spent a lot of time on the set for different reasons. I mean, sometimes I'd bring the scripts down there myself, or we'd have a change and we'd have to get it down there and couldn't wait for the whole process.
Yeah.
And also just for the fun of it, especially Deep Space Nine, because those sets were so awesome. I mean, just to sit in Quark's bar or watch them shoot on any set is cool. Deep Space Nine in particular, I think had some really cool sets. So I spent probably more time there than on any other one.
I mean, I started watching Next Generation Series 1. I've just turned it on one day. I didn't know what it was really, and so on.
Right.
Deep Space Nine, by a clear mile, is my favorite show. I absolutely love it. That's the one that I can watch from episode 1 right through again and again and again, because I just love the characters. They felt so deep. So I always felt Next Generation took a while to settle in while they were a brand new sort of show, and then I just thought it was amazing. But Deep Space Nine for me, I know some people don't like it, but I just thought right from day one, it was absolutely what it should be. And I just thought it got better and better every year. It was just
I completely agree. I mean, I enjoyed my time working on all the shows. I have dear friends from the cast from all those shows. I manage a lot of the actors from all 3 of those shows. But personally, Deep Space Nine was my favorite. I think also because you not only had 7 or 8 or 9 main characters, series regulars, but you also had like 20
I know, yeah.
And
wonderful.
They all had lives and backgrounds and stories that were interesting.
I would honestly say Garak was my favorite character in all of the Star Treks of all time. I mean, he was just a perfectly written role, and just everything about him was so much fun to watch. He was just
absolutely. I mean, yeah, and Andy Robinson's such an amazing actor anyway. But yeah, I agree with you. Deep Space Nine was definitely my favorite.
Yeah, it was amazing. But then First Contact as well, the best Star Trek film for me. I mean, as a geek, I think I saw that 6 or 7 times in the cinema. I saw it 3 times in the first 24 hours. I was like,
wow.
I'm going again. Just because I was through and through with Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and well, but those 2 really got me the most.
I actually did work on Generations, but for some reason there was a mix-up on the credit, and I never was credited for that. But I did have the same job as I did on the TV shows and First Contact. But going back to what we were talking about, the sets, besides Deep Space Nine, the First Contact sets were amazing, unbelievable. So I do remember going down there just to watch.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah.
Fantastic. Could people say the things I've read in the past and so on, that Next Generation, the cast were a little bit wild and sort of always joking, and whereas the Deep Space Nine was very serious and very sort of focused. But you said Deep Space Nine was more fun sort of visit. Was it like that? Would you say it was always? What was the atmosphere like on the 3 different sets?
I'm not really the best person to ask that because I wasn't on the set daily, but I do think the Next Generation, they always talk about how they kind of, play jokes on each other. And that's all true. I mean, I've heard all those stories too. And I know that cast and I know them personally. And you can tell when you're with them that they're still like that. They're always teasing each other, ribbing each other, whatever. Deep Space Nine, I don't know that they were a more serious cast. It was just, I don't even know if this is the correct way to say it. It was a more serious show in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly. And you had so many people on that set. But when you took those actors out of that environment, they're all best friends on Deep Space Nine. They have a lot of fun. We've all traveled the world together. So they are a fun group of people. I just think it was the situation on the set that maybe they weren't able to have as much fun or cut loose. And also, there was a lot more actors on Deep Space Nine that were in prosthetics. And
Yes.
it's not easy to have fun when you have those, let's be honest. They're there from 5, 4, 3 in the morning. They have to get through. They can hardly talk. So I think that was part of it, maybe. I think the Voyager actors, again, not being on that set, but hearing their stories, I think they had some fun. There was a lot of different tensions there with different actors coming and leaving and things. But when you see them again at a convention or at a dinner party or something, they all get along. It was now a year ago, March, but fortunately, last February in 2020, we were able to have the Star Trek cruise. And that was the theme for that was the Voyager 25th anniversary.
Yeah,
so almost the whole cast was on that cruise. And it was a lot of fun to see them in that environment all these years later and having a good time together. So, listen, I've worked on TV shows and other TV shows, sitcoms, dramas. There's always going to be some fun on a set, but that's not what people are there for. Let's face
it. Of course, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Done. Yeah.
But it does feel like Star Trek is one big family in many ways. All these different shows, and there's so many shows even now, just churning them out. But Discovery. I just love Discovery as well. I'm just sort of got into that one, and you see them mixing with different cast members from different shows in meetings, conventions, and they always seem to be that family, which is just wonderful, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely one big Star Trek family. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we are currently in production for the Voyager documentary that's being produced by 455 Films, the same people that did For the Love of Spock and Captains and Chaos. Yeah. And last year's or 2 years ago, the Deep Space Nine documentary that was such a huge hit. And so in that process, we're interviewing people, actors and production people. But again, like on the cruise, it was so fun to film all of them together. But not just from one. During the course of this documentary for Voyager, we did an Indiegogo campaign to raise the money for it, a crowdfunder. Mm-hmm. And we had actors from all the other series so willing to help us out and do whatever they could, whether it was tweeting or getting on an interview with us or a virtual event or helping out next year when we do the in-person perks that people donated for. So yes, it is one big family. Absolutely.
Tell me more about this documentary that's coming up. But first of all, tell me how the Deep Space Nine one came about and what was involved there, and then what's going on with the Voyager one. Tell me what you can tell me. I don't want to take away from the future, but
sure. No, Dave Zappone, who is the executive producer and owner, I suppose, of 455 Films, he's been in the business a long time, and he has worked with William Shatner for years. Done all of those that Bill has done along the way, like I said, including the Captains, Chaos. And then he worked with Adam Nimoy, and they did For the Love of Spock. That was also and so then I think Dave just decided, let's tackle one of the series, and came up with the idea of doing the Deep Space Nine documentary. And eventually, not right away, but eventually, Ivan Bear came on board with Dave. And that's when that documentary really found its groundwork, because everyone loves Ira, and the whole cast got involved and all the production people. And it was an amazing thing to be a part of, just to see everybody get together and have it put together and go to the theater and see it. And we had a premiere at the studio at Paramount that was so fun. And then we had a red carpet premiere in Birmingham in England.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun and a pretty big hit. So it just seemed logical to do
the Voyager
next one, which would be Voyager on its 25th anniversary. So that's kind of how it all started for this particular one. And we knew that the cruise was going to have all those actors on board, and what a great opportunity to shoot them. And also to have the environment of a cruise ship. That's never been done in a documentary for Star Trek. So, and then of course the plan was to go to London last year and to Germany with destinations and shoot more. Well, of course that blew up because of COVID, but London is going to happen in November. And so we will fly over there and pick up the documentary there. But we are currently shooting here as well. Now that things have opened up here in California, especially, we are doing one-on-one interviews now, and we're doing some traveling to get certain people that don't live in Los Angeles. So our goal is to have this out hopefully in the fall of 2023.
Lovely. Well, I can't wait for it. I mean, the Deep Space Nine, right? I didn't get to the cinema to see it. I remember my friend said, "You want to go?" And I was busy on the day that they were going. So I did see it on Amazon, and you don't get many documentaries that are just so rich about TV shows, and everything about it was interesting and fun. You know, and everyone was so engaged. It never got boring. It was just lovely. It really was lovely. I can't wait for the next one. So
yeah, it was good, and we just beat the all-time record for crowdfund for a documentary. This Voyager one, over $1 million. No one has ever gone over $1 million. So we're very proud of that, and very, very thankful to the fans. If it weren't for the fans, that would not have happened. Sure. So we're really thrilled with that, and I think you will see a very good documentary.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Absolutely sure it will. So what would you say? I'm trying to think. Are there any moments or any scripts that during? I mean, how many were there? 180 for each series. There was an awful lot of scripts, isn't there? We'll talk about it. Yeah. I had every single videotape on my wall at one point of the lot. So, but were there any scripts when you got the script and you thought that won't work? That can't go out there. That's either too dark or pushing the envelope too much. Has there ever had any scripts you had to turn away for that sort of reason?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. Star Trek had a script submission policy program where if you followed our guidelines, anybody in the world could send a script into us, and eventually they would get read, and sometimes they would get bought, or a story from it would be purchased. So in that sense, there was 99% of those scripts never got purchased or produced. But the 1% actually that we did use, Ron Moore sent a script in early on in Next Generation called The Bonding. Yep. And Michael Piller loved it, and he said, "We're going to produce this." He sent Ron Moore away to write another one. He came back with The Defector. And of course, somebody like Ron Moore has gone on to do amazing things.
Series 3 of Next Generation, though, really seemed to find its feet. I mean, they were great episodes.
Yes.
Yes. About it.
Absolutely. So, but overall, for scripts that were in production or in pre-production, I'm sure that, of course, you have a first draft of a script, and then you're getting notes from, hundreds of people on about what to do and not to do, and does this work, or is it too dark, or is it not funny enough? So sure, that's a daily process, though, on any television show. That maybe that isn't the right way to go with that scene. Maybe it's too heavy or too dark, so yeah, that's an ongoing process.
And again, obviously, there's so many to choose from, but are there any episodes which you were particularly proud of going, that one really works? That's my favorite. That's one I'd recommend people should watch if they're not seen Star Trek. Even 3 or 4 if you want to choose, because choose one out of like 500 or so is not possible.
Well, I have my favorites, mostly from Deep Space Nine. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of the ones that weren't following the whole serialization of Deep Space Nine. Yeah. I mean, I loved Take Me Out to the Holosuite, which was the baseball episode. I mean, that was so much fun. And then, of course, our Tribble episode was amazing. Yeah, so that was really fun. And
I think Armand Bashir was one of my favorite ones for the standalone. I thought the James Bond was just a fantastic episode.
I was just going to think that one. The name wasn't coming to me. And then the other one that I loved, and again, you'll have to help me with the name or look it up if you use this, but it was a 2-parter. And I think it's when we went back to like the 30s or 40s, and Avery Brooks was a journalist. Sisko was a journalist.
I know exactly which one you mean. Then there was a reprise of it in the beginning of Series 7. And I used to know every single title, and that one has actually just gone for me right now. But I know exactly.
I know.
Fantastic.
Well, listen.
Although I think actually my favorite episode of Deep Space Nine had to be in the Pale Moonlight when Sisko
of course
the Romulans. That I've watched that one so many times. I mean, it just is. It's the perfect episode for me, is that one. And of course, Garak's entry, which I love Garak, so that worked as well. I thought him and Avery Brooks worked so well together in it. It was just, it really showed that Star Trek didn't always have to be sweet and light, that he goes down the dark path to do what's right. And it was great. Really, really, really great.
Right. And then, of course, again, between my age and the fact that this was all 30 years ago, the titles escape me now. But one more episode on Deep Space Nine that I loved was when Nog was hurt and got his leg.
Yeah. The one in the holosuite or the one when
I don't know the name of that.
There's two of them, wasn't there? Because he actually got injured in one episode.
Well, both of them are great. It's the one where in the holosuite where he spends so much time with Vic Fontaine.
Yeah. In Series 10. Yeah.
Beautiful episode. Beautiful episode. And then for Next Generation, there was a lot of good ones. The Offspring, I loved, where we met Data's daughter.
Incredible. Yeah. Because that one, I remember in the interviews, people saying, "Oh, can Jonathan Frakes direct?" And then he did that, and it was like, yeah.
There's the answer.
Beautiful. And it followed Yesterday's Enterprise, which was also amazing. I think it was my favorite videotape on the set because it had those two episodes in it. Yesterday's Enterprise was amazing.
That's the next one I was going to bring up is Yesterday's Enterprise, of course. And then early on, Measure of a Man in the second season, I believe, by Melinda. Yeah. There was a lot of great episodes. And then Voyager had so many too. And I now that I'm working on this Voyager documentary, a lot of those came back to my mind too. But they had a lot of fun. That the whole thing with Captain Proton and.
You like the holodeck, don't you? I can tell you like the holodeck episodes because it gives you something different, I suppose, doesn't it? Because you're getting in a different setting and.
Well, yes, for me, for sure, because I'm not really a science fiction fan.
Right.
So I like those things that kind of brought it out of that, even though it is science fiction, but it broke that day to day, let's chase the bad guys, or we're being chased by the bad guys or whatever. So maybe that's why I tend to kind of go for those more.
Yeah, they are great though. And it is so much fun. I mean, I even love in First Contact when they go on the holodeck just for a little while and it changes the whole style of the show because it's when they visit the bargain, I know, but it changed it completely. What's happening here? And it was so clever and so slick. But I mean, I think we all
yes.
How good Jonathan Frakes was in every episode he directed, and then he got those two movies as well. The second and the third, and they were just fantastic. And it's just absolutely lovely. Yeah. So you say you actually now manage some of the cast as well and so on, which is that from still doing acting work?
I do. Excuse me. No, actually, I managed them for Star Trek appearances for the convention and the cruises and personal appearances that have to do with Star Trek. And I started doing that, 25 years ago, probably now. As I said earlier, I got involved in the conventions right away. And
why did you choose to do that? What was it that made you go, I'm going to do this? Was it just because you love the fans, or was it about promoting the show?
Well, no, my dear friend Eric Stillwell, who worked as a production assistant also on The Next Generation, he was working there when I started there, and we became really good friends, and he was a big fan. And so he'd been going to conventions his whole life anyway. So he was already kind of working with Creation Entertainment back in those days and other events. And so he took me to one, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool. And then I started working for Creation. And actually, back when I first got involved in the conventions, I was the one selling the T-shirts and pictures.
Wow. Right.
Yeah. And then I started being a guest at them and doing stage presentations and talking about the writing department. And then that continued. And then for many years, because of that script submission program that we had, Ron Moore and Brandon Braga and myself put together a writer's workshop that we took it all over the world to conventions. England, everywhere, all over the United States. So that was a whole other part of my life of the conventions. Sure. And then that was in its height. A lot of the actors came to me and said, our theatrical managers or agents, they don't want to deal with these conventions. It's not a lot of money. They don't understand it. Do you mind talking to the convention promoter for me? So that's how I started doing that. It all just was word of mouth, and it was all my friends who were the actors. And so all these years later, I'm still doing that for them and still traveling with them and on my own as a guest for conventions. So that's how I got involved in it. Wow. And that's why besides the fact that we're friends, that's why I'm still so involved with them. Of course, this year of 2020 for everyone obviously was a disaster. And for the convention market, it just all went away. Yeah. We are fortunately, and I'm very thankful and very hopeful, we are starting to book conventions now. And I've gotten just in the last 2 weeks emails and calls from promoters, and let's get back on it. Let's pick new dates. We have the cruise to look forward to next year again. We have Las Vegas coming up in August that I'm positive will happen, and London destinations in November. It looks like, God willing, that'll all happen. So I've missed it. My pocketbook has missed it. But I've just missed seeing everyone, and we've done some virtual events. It's not the same.
So do you envision yourself doing this for a lot longer? Would you like to keep doing conventions as long as you possibly can and still be involved in it all?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I'm 62 years old now. So if I can't imagine trying to find another career. I was nervous this year because I thought, what if this never comes back? What if the conventions never come back? We've been doing virtual ones, but the pay is not the same, obviously. It's a whole different ballgame. But
people want to meet you. We want to see the people. It is true.
Absolutely. And so like I said, I'm very hopeful now for the future. And yeah, this is all I can see myself doing until I retire, which may never happen or whatever. But yeah, no, this is what I stepped into in 1987. And I guess you never know where your life is going to take you from one minute to the next. I mean, somebody had asked me in 1986 or 87, would I be involved with Star Trek? No, I didn't even watch the show. So, I again, going back to, I only took that job because of Patrick and Jonathan. Yeah. So it's just whatever karma, fate, kismet, I don't know. Yeah. But
and now you are Mrs. Star Trek because people call you because you've done everything. So it's great.
Oh, well, it's a lot of fun, and I feel very, very blessed.
Well, so, I certainly hope that one day we meet you over here in England, maybe even in Sci Fi Scarborough, which would be wonderful.
I would love to come. I love the small events. I mean, the big ones are great for various reasons, but I miss the small events. In the old days, we used to have so many in the United States and so many more in England and in Germany. I mean, I've traveled the world doing these, but I miss the small fan events. I really do. So I hope sometime I can come to your event.
I certainly hope so as well. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I could speak to you for about another 3 or 4 hours, but we only have so much time. Thank you very much. And thank you for everything you've done with Star Trek and made so many people's lives so much better for watching it, because it's a massive part of so many people's lives. It has affected us in really deep ways. So it's wonderful to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks very much.